So last time we made abstract schema and then we made compound schema, and we worked at fitting them all together in the same space. So what we're going to do now is just design really, really simple characters. Just because designing characters is something that's fun, it'll keep you motivated, and you'll see that just by studying simple schema and abstract schema that you already have a ton of knowledge, right? So let's start by just kind of making a space here. And this is without any knowledge of perspective or anything like that, right? Just kind of laying in our space, and then also laying in our eye line, right? So we'll say it's from above. So the camera's here. We're going to be looking down on these characters. And then we'll use that concept of compound forms, right? So we're kind of like just making a cylinder, and the cylinder is going to be open on the bottom. And then as it approaches the eye line, it's gonna close up a little bit. But not too much because the eye line is up here, right? So, okay, so now we're going to adapt that cylinder into just a little character design, right? So basically, he's facing this way, and we're going to put like just two little legs here, right? And then when we think about this, like these are paws or something maybe, that is as open as the bottom of the cylinder here, right? Now, okay, so we have kind of like this big cylindrical Totoro character, and then we're going to, so this is the top of that cylinder, so his neck is going to sit somewhere like kind of in the center. Something like that, and then we'll give him ears, right? And then remember, we're looking down on this character, so when we make the eyes and the features of the face, those are going to be lower on the circle. If we make them up higher, then it breaks the reality of the space, right? Okay, so here we have this little guy, and then we have his arms attached on the side. This also gives us a circle, right? And we can use this circle to, maybe place some claws. But that's fine. It can be really simple, right? Cool. So we have a character like this. We know that we're looking down on him, so everything is going downwards. Cool, right? So that looks pretty good. And because we've been studying compound forms, we know that we can kind of, once we've constructed him this way, we can draw him again in the same space. But this time we'll try, drawing him from the side. So we're going from the side and downward. This circle is really open. We start with the cylinder, right? And then maybe that cylinder for his abdomen is a little bit flattened, right? So we know the direction of his shoulders and the direction of his paws. We're still looking down. All right, and then putting the head perfectly in the center. We have that already too. And then we know, because his shoulder attaches over here, that you won't even see it, right? You'll just see maybe these little claws from the side. We know this shoulder, we're going to see the whole thing, and we don't see it in this drawing, right? So here we have this shoulder. It might be a little bigger, a little more forward. That bottom part is nice and round, and that gives us the orientation of the feet. Cool, right? So just that same idea. I think his head is a little bit small and his shoulders a little bit too high. Okay, and then we can draw a line. Lines up with the orientation of everything else. And even if we're not putting too much effort into these ears, we still know exactly where they go. This one is more towards us, so it's going to be bigger, right? And this one is smaller. Same with the tummy. We know exactly where it is because we've been practicing these compound forms. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? It can be like, it can be just okay, right? It can be like, we know this one is bigger, it's here, and then we're still looking down on the form, so we have a nice little line for the eyes. We can orient the teeth, and remember this little tooth is closer to us, so it's a little bit bigger, right? Same thing with the eyes. This eye is closer to us, so it's bigger, right? That is a little more round. So see, and then just like, you know, when you're turning those forms around in space, you can see when they're wrong. You can see, like, you know, you can see the slope on that. That's a little bit too square. Give that another shot. That arm is hidden. That arm is almost totally hidden. And then this foot, I'm gonna say, really sticks out too much. So this should be way bigger. Cool. So so just like that, we have a little character, and we have also managed to orient them in space. And because they're in the same space, it kind of just looks like two little characters occupying the same world, right? And we can continue to build a little environment for them, right? We could build kind of the tree, right? Because we know where the tree goes. So we know that the root, we're going to be looking down on the root ball, and then we're going to be up in the branches, right? And then when we get up here, we're going to be looking up at the branches, right? So we have a sense of it, and all of this is coming together, even if you don't, you know, even if these characters are purposefully simple, right? And it doesn't matter what they are as well. We can do, let's do another one. Let's do, like, I'm thinking of like R2-D2. Okay, so we know that, so we have this cylinder for reference, right? We have the top and the bottom circle. And so we're going to make the top of R2-D2 should be exactly that closed, and the bottom should be exactly that open if he's the same height, right? So I'm going to make him kind of oriented this way. He's a circle. Very open. And then this is the top of the cylinder. Kind of open. Just in order to make it make sense, it just has to be less open than the bottom one, right? Where it starts to get confusing is if one guy in your picture has a different line of vision, has a different camera than every other person. So if these were upside down, if the circle was bigger on the top and then it was kind of a little more shallow on the bottom, then all of a sudden the camera would be upside down only for one character and they wouldn't be in the same space anymore. Cool. So so we're just keeping the camera the same, and the same would be true if this was too narrow, right? If this all of a sudden got really narrow, then that means it's close to the eye line. So if this were like, if this cylinder for R2-D2 were like this, then that means that the eye line is something like right there, right? So we don't want that. We want all of these characters in this scene having the same eye line. And it's not a science. We don't know exactly what it is, but we know that past right around here, cylinders get really narrow. And then as you get away from it, the circle gets really large, right? And that's all it is. If it gets too narrow on one character and not another, it's not in the same space. It's not real. Okay, so and there's also these things that you can buy where it's like a plastic drawing template, so you can draw circles and ovals, because we draw them a lot. But I think it's also really, really nice just to practice and get it in your hand. All right, so I think I'm going to orient him this way, right? So that it's all sort of the same space. And so that one of his little shoulders will be here. Let's use a ball for that for now. And then on the other side, you'll barely see it, right? Cool. Okay, so I'm just treating these as, straight. I see the front surface of this one, so then I'll also see the front surface of this one. These are just squares, but they just have to be lined up or on the same plane. And then as the square goes down, it's a square that's round on top. As the square goes down, it gets really square towards the bottom, right? Cool. So that's the bottom, and then I have to determine where the bottom of that foot is. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that, so that the front of this cylinder sticks out quite a bit. Cool. And then make sure that everything, this cutoff is a little more, you can tell when it's misaligned, right? It should be like that. It should be like that. And then I'm going to deal with the bottom, like whatever that little tread thing is first. And then I'm going to connect it, right? Just to make sure that everything stays lined up. Okay, now see, because we've been doing this work of building compound schema and always asking in our drawings, is this right? Is it aligned? Is it correct? And then because we have that under our belts, then we're still asking these questions and we have those skills, right? Like, so see this shoulder, that's right. And the joint of the foot, that's also right. But it would be really confusing to me if I hadn't studied it, right? Like if I hadn't done it already. So to me, like, doesn't this leg look super short? It really kind of comes off that way. And then, if I'm just drawing it without trying to build a natural sense of schema and trying to create compound schema, that looks really, really short to me. If I didn't have this knowledge already of how to structure it. And notice that, we're going to do full perspective work in this class. And I'm not doing it in this drawing, but I'm just building these planes so that things line up, right? If something is forward, that's fine. If something is to the side, though, it kind of needs to go to the same point, all the angles, right? But if I'm not doing it perfectly, like if I'm not, there's no reason for me to go in with a ruler and devise a perspective space. And I think that understanding it intuitively and just trying it is way better, right? And having that, doing this kind of work with compound forms where you're like, oh, is that right? Is this going to make sense? Having that intuitive knowledge is way, way better than designing with the ruler. All right, so now, even though you think the sphere is easy, it's not super easy, because you do want another couple lines, something like this, and you want the cylinders to progress properly, right? So that looks about right. The circle is closing, but it's not all the way closed. And that gives me the top dome of R2-D2. Now, why does it matter? Why can't you just draw a semicircle? Anyone could probably, intuit that and do it really easily. But the reason it matters is, for placement of those details, like whatever that, that weird panel that he has on the front, the rows of switches and stuff like that. If any of these things are, and then the little LED boxes, if any of these things break the three-dimensional reality of it, then it doesn't make sense anymore. But if everything in a picture has a similar reality structure and a similar eye line, then it will make sense, right? No matter what. Okay, so now I know that one thing we haven't really messed with this pen very much, but I think that everybody has it. So I'm going to say just try to integrate this into this drawing because it's really fun. I always line with my brush, and by lines I mean the outside touch of whatever I'm doing, right? So and then I always think of the line as communicating space, right? So here we have this is really close to us. Well, wait a minute. So just like before, I might make a light source, something like here. Here's a little sun. And then I think about what is towards the light source and what is away from it. So this line here is really far away from the light source, even though it's really close to me. So I'm using the line to define the light and the space even further, right? I don't think of a line as any interior mark. I think of it only as an exterior edge. So when there is something like this is a corner, it's an exterior edge, but so for me it's kind of ambivalent whether or not it's a line. So I just mark it like that, ambivalently. All right. So I try to restrict my brush line to exterior edges. This is facing the light. This is facing the light, but it might have a shadow from the little leg there. And plus it's sort of interior. This is facing the light, so I'm going to make it super light. Cool. And see how the brush really covers all of that structure. That's so important to just to know structure and then to stop messing with it, right? So if I'm taking this, if I'm taking this ink and I'm trying to restructure my drawing and thinking about my sight line, I am going to screw up. Ink is permanent, right? All right, so this is heavy. It's away from the light, and that's light. And it also gives you such a sense of freedom, like, oh, my structure's done, and now I just can kind of, play around with these shadows. So under my little R2D2 there are some very heavy shadows, I'm just saying. It's away from the light. Right? Yeah, so for me, the brush, the inking is just irreplaceable as a time of, like, just playing and not being mathematical. Maybe dark behind him. Cool. And all those interior details I'm going to avoid with the brush, because my brush, remember, is reserved for exterior lines. I mean, already it's feeling really spatial, dimensional, and that black makes it really exciting. So my little Pokemon character, also I'm going to treat him the same. His ears are up in the air, so I'm going to think that maybe they could be light, like they could be illuminated. Oops. So I made a rule where the brush is only for exterior, and then I did the eyes, but it's okay. You can also just do what you feel. That's an exterior line that goes interior. But I think it is good to, think of the brush as a sense of touch. Also, I'm kind of breaking my light rule here, but I'm just having fun with the brush too. The belly overhangs the feet. That's pretty critical. Cool. And then, this, I'm considering this an exterior line because it's the exterior of his head. Plus, it's really critical that this be, have a little shadow on it. Cool. Okay. All right. So now I have like some space set up. I'm rinsing my brush. I always, when I work with permanent ink, it's always good to wash your brushes and soak them up when you're done. And of course, everything that you just saw could have been with this brush, this little handheld brush, which is really, really nice, especially if you want to work without setting up a full drawing studio every single time.